Welcome to the Grow Podcast. I'm Pastor Mike with New Hope Network. We're here to help you take your next step in your relationship with Jesus. I'm so glad you're with us today.
Well, what is up, New Hope family? Welcome to the first episode of the Grow Podcast. So excited that you're here. My name is David, and I'm going to be kind of co-hosting the podcast a lot of the time with Pastor Mike. Pastor Mike, welcome to the first episode of our podcast.
I'm excited. Episode one.
Episode one. So it's all uphill from here.
I hope it's all uphill from here. We'll figure it out.
But let's talk a little bit before we jump in, just kind of the goal, the purpose of this podcast. Why are we doing this?
Our goal really in this, if we can just put it in a statement, is to help you grow in your walk with Jesus. We want to help you take that next step. And we know that, like Sunday morning, as we worship together, we pray for one another, we have some teaching together, but it's a little bit of a limited time. Not that this time isn't limited, but we want to be able to help you take just another step, maybe even to answer some of your questions and to go a little bit deeper with some things. Because the bottom line is we believe everybody has a next step. Doesn't matter where you're at. So we want to help everybody take that next step.
Yeah, and sometimes it's going to look like you were just saying, we're going to dive a little bit deeper into the message from this last week. You brought up question and answer too. Yeah, we're hoping that sometimes we'll have questions come in from
That'll
people that, hey, I'm
looking forward to that.
We'll see if Pastor Mike can answer your theology questions.
Are you going to give me a heads up?
Yeah, I'm going to email my old theology professor. But sometimes maybe we'll have a different topic that we want to talk about. Yeah. It's going to change and fluctuate, but the goal of it is always going to be, like you were saying, taking that next step. What is your next step? How can you grow this week in your relationship with Jesus?
And a lot of times it will tie in with our weekend teaching across our campuses, but sometimes, and I think you just kind of referred to it, sometimes it'll go a whole different place that we just feel is needed and maybe where the Lord's taking us.
And this week it is, because we're still in our series on Ezra and Nehemiah, and we've been in that for, it's been a few months
since
now,
Easter.
Since Easter. Wow.
It feels like forever.
And we've learned so much from those books. But we're going to dive a little bit deeper into talking about relief today. And
how do you spell relief? Do you remember that commercial?
No.
That takes me back. Maybe I just aged myself out.
I'm younger than you, Pastor Mike.
And some of you are going, I cannot believe you brought that up.
I want to bring up my favorite, our producer raised his hand.
He did. He's like, stop.
I want to bring up one of my favorite things I've ever heard you say in a sermon. I think we talked about it a little bit on the lobby too.
So
after.
It was a dad joke?
No, it was not your dad joke
okay.
from Father's Day. No, you said, God is not in the business of bringing you relief. He's in the business of bringing you restoration. And so let's talk a little bit about relief.
Yeah,
what is relief?
Obviously, that concept isn't original with me. That goes back to Jesus. But I've been working through this. He's pretty smart. Yeah. I've been working through some of this lately, and from an author, one of my favorite authors, John Eldredge. I don't know if you've ever read any of John Eldredge's writing, and he talks about this so much. And the Lord's been teaching me this of the difference between relief and restoration, because we live in what someone called kind of the aspirin culture. If something is wrong, let's take an aspirin for that ache, that pain, that anxiety, whatever is happening. And let's just get rid of the pain. Let's get rid of the pressure. But when you do that, you aren't necessarily dealing with the root cause. Webster defines relief as a feeling of relaxation or reassurance that's due to, and here's the key, a release of distress. And that's where we tend to want the release from distress, but we don't always deal with what's causing the distress. So kind of the question that I've been resonating with and thinking lately, even in our teaching, and even looking forward to some of the next series where we're going to be going into this a little bit deeper, is when you feel distress or when you feel anxiety, when you feel pressure, what do you really want? Well, we all want it gone.
Yeah, relief from the pressure. Yeah.
But the pattern we get ourselves into, let me just put it this way for you, coach. All right, basketball coach. If you have a player who has a pair of shoes, who every time they sit down on the bench, they have to unlace their shoes and have to take their shoes off every time. You kind of look and go, "What are you doing?" And they say, "Well, my shoes are painful." As a coach, what are you going to tell them?
Get new shoes.
Yeah,
probably.
but if they look at you and say, I didn't know that was an option, or I can't afford them. Their thinking is all about relief because they didn't know getting new shoes was an option. And the same is true for us. Is for a lot of us, we get kind of caught in that mindset of, oh, I didn't know that actually dealing with the root cause was really possible. And sometimes we don't even know it's a root cause. We're just used to the pain, and I untie my shoes, and I've relieved the pressure, and I just move on. And okay, that's okay. And because we just get caught in the pattern.
Do you think there's a cultural root to that? I mean, clearly, our culture is not the first culture to want relief over restoration, but we do live in a culture that's very focused on immediate responses, whether it is to pain relief. I mean, you think pain relief ads, and it's whichever one kicks in the fastest is the one I want. Or, we live in a social media world where we want instant responses to things, or we want to instantly respond to something. Do you think that our culture has anything to do with it?
Absolutely. And there's actually been a study. I'm trying to remember the book. I'll bring it back in a future podcast, where they've actually done a study on these devices, and especially the phones that we carry in our pockets. We're being conditioned for instant response. A notification hits, and it actually creates a physiological response. And we're just conditioned for instant response, instant relief, instant reaction, far more so than I think any other time in our history.
Okay, so then, it's pretty clear we should want restoration over relief. But if I'm sitting here and, okay, Pastor Mike, this is my problem. This is my spiritual problem, and I want restoration, but I can't even see restoration through the pain that I'm in right now. How would you respond to someone in that situation?
I think part of it is first begin to learn to identify where the pressure is coming from. And if we can go back to Nehemiah really helps us with, in Nehemiah chapter 4, they're building the wall and they're feeling pressure. Nehemiah 4 verse 10, and I'll just read it. It says, "Meanwhile, the people in Judah said, the strength of the builders is giving out." So there's the first kind of pressure we get, is we just get tired sometimes, And like in my relationship with Kylie, I'll get grumpy, I'll get angry or whatever. And what is it? I'm just tired, And it says, and then it goes on and says, "And there's so much rubble that we cannot rebuild the wall." One of the second things we deal with is frustration or anger. There's just stuff in my way. I'm tired of this. And then it goes on. It says, "Our enemies said, before they know it or see us, we'll be right there among them, and we'll kill them and put an end to their work." Third one is really fear. So you got, if I can be kind of pastor here in a moment.
You're going to start all of them with the same letter.
It's all going to be the same letter.
That's your favorite.
Fatigue or tired, frustration or anger, or failure or fear. See, I got a double F in the last one. Did you notice that one?
You snuck in a free fourth one.
But if you look at that, those three kinds of pressure are what we deal with all the time. I told a story a couple weeks ago about my skiing journey with my friend and how we discovered what a double black diamond is. Yep. I experienced all three of those things on that hill. I'd go down, my legs would get tired. I'd hit the side, and that's where I invented the sit down, turn around. I'm going to sit down, I'm going to turn around, I'm going to give my legs a break. Or times where I don't know if have you ever skied? Do you ski?
Yeah, I skied a lot growing up.
So skiing, and you feel like you're struggling, and then there's this kid that's about yay high. The poles they don't even ski with poles, and they just go flying by, and you're struggling. What do you want to do in that moment? I'll tell you what I want to do.
Throw my poles at them, probably?
I want to stab them with my pole.
That's aggressive.
That's kind of aggressive. But you just get frustrated. What? Yeah. Frustration is a sign of pressure. Or, you hit the end, it's like, that should have taken longer. As failure. I experienced all three of those. But part of recognizing is stopping, saying, okay, where is this pressure coming from, and what's it causing in me? Is it causing me to be tired? Because if I'm tired, I want to medicate it. I want to distract. If I'm frustrated, I want to lash out, stab that kid going by. Or if I feel like I'm failing, or fear tends to make us want to avoid it, to withdraw, to escape. So the first step, I think, is just to identify, how am I reacting to this? And I think that's part of why Nehemiah wrote that, is just say, here's some of the things that we have in there.
So then how do we avoid looking for that just relief to the problem instead of focusing on restoration? I should have said that the opposite. How do we move towards restoration rather than heading towards relief?
I think the first thing, we identify where the pressure is coming from and recognize, kind of admit to ourselves, maybe this is, confession is good for the soul. Scripture says if we confess our sins, he's faithful and just to forgive us. But it's not just confessing our sin. It's also confessing the fact, here's what I really want to do. And so we begin to head it off. But to move forward, is recognizing that, is to recognize our souls were not made to carry the pressures of this world. I don't know if you've ever thought about that before, but your soul was made to live in intimacy with God, with the joy and the relationship of real relationship. It was made for the infinite, and now we live in a finite world. So what does that mean? It means our soul is constantly looking for something more, and it's not designed to carry the weights and the burdens of an infected world. It's like your milk was not designed to carry strychnine. It's not healthy for you. It's not good. It's made to help you and to be healthy. And so recognizing that. And this is why the Bible is, I think, just so almost, have you ever noticed it? Straightforward. So in like Galatians...
It can be very blunt at times.
But it talks about all three of these things. So in Galatians 6, verse 9, it says, don't grow weary in doing good. Like, oh, I'm tired. Okay, thanks, God. Don't grow weary. Don't get tired. Or Isaiah 35, say to those with fearful hearts, be strong and don't fear. Or like the angel showed up to Joshua, be strong and courageous. Or Psalm 37 says, don't be angry. It's almost like the Bible is saying, stop it. Stop it.
Just cut it out.
But if we recognize we were not designed to carry this.
Right.
And then I think second of all, and this is going to sound so simplistic.
Is this your Sunday school answer?
It sounds like a Sunday school answer. But the key is to make sure you're taking that pressure and giving the pressure to someone, the only one, who's intended to carry the pressure. Doesn't mean you ignore the problem, but the only one who is designed to carry the pressure. That's why Jesus said in Matthew chapter 11, come to me, all you who are weary and heavy burdened, and I will give you rest. But notice what he said. It's not just saying, come to me, and I'm just going to kind of go, here's the pressure. Notice what he says next. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me. So the key is when we come to Jesus and say, Jesus, I need you to take this pressure from me, he's going to teach us how to trust him. So this is not going to be an instantaneous process. Right. This takes practice.
And that's where, so I have a relationship that has an issue, or I have a problem at work or financial struggles.
Yeah.
Again, that's where the Sunday school answer of give it to Jesus. It's like, cool. Okay, I gave it to Jesus, but I still have this problem in my relationship, or I still have, my basement's still flooded, or my car's still broken down, or I still lost my job. How do I practically take that from, I want to give it to Jesus, but I still have this problem that exists?
Let me back up into something you say, because I think that's one of the reasons why people try Christianity and feel like it failed them and walk away.
Interesting.
Is because they try the simplistic answer, or they're given a simplistic answer. It's like, well, I said, Jesus, take this. Jesus, and nothing happened. Well, part of it is realizing, the Bible says you need to work out your salvation with fear and trembling. So it's not meaning we have to work to be saved by Jesus. But it means there is some learning. That's why Jesus said, take my yoke upon you and learn from you. So stick with this. So let me give, and I know time's in essence here, let me give just some basic things. First of all, and this comes from John Eldridge, I talked about this actually a couple weeks ago. Start with when you're feeling the pressure and you recognize, okay, I'm tired, I'm angry, I'm I feel like I'm failing. Start with the prayer of turning it over. John Eldredge, in an incredible little book called Get Your Life Back, teaches the prayer of release or the 1-minute pause. And I use this throughout my entire day. I'll start my day with this, I'll end my day with this, and I'll pause throughout the day. When I got to the office just a little while ago, I pulled up and I stopped and put my head on the steering wheel. And just simple prayer of, Jesus, I give everything and everyone to you. And I'll get very specific on that. But that's, I think, a starting point. And to say it out loud for me matters. And then the second thing is, make sure you're getting time with Jesus. Getting time with Jesus. Mark chapter 1 tells, this is one of the first stories we get from Mark about Jesus. They tell all this stuff, all these miracles that are happening. Great stuff is happening. And then at the end of the day, Jesus goes out and he spends time by himself. And his disciples go looking for him. They're like, everyone is looking for you, Jesus. And Jesus said, yeah, I know. Let's go someplace else. It's like, but everyone is looking for you. And here's Jesus himself who says, who he's modeling for us, regulating the pressure.
Sure.
Saying, I took time. And now I know how to respond. I don't have to give in to the pressure. Everybody's looking for me. So make sure you take some time. There are times with me, I'm like, I just need to clear my calendar for the next 20, 30 minutes and not feel guilty about it and do that. And so prayer of turning it over, finding that time with God every day. And then I think the third thing is just learn what I would call refilling practices.
Which are?
There's all kinds of them. Solitude is a big one for me, and I think it probably is a big one for all of us. Jesus practiced that. He got off by himself on a regular basis. Someone called another one benevolent detachment. Turn off your phone for a period of time. You don't have to respond to every notification. I know.
That's the hardest thing you just said to everybody listening to this podcast.
Including me.
Turn off your watch.
Yeah, my Apple Watch. Thank you very much for that. But, to not pick up my phone when that notification is, we're just conditioned to do it. I know more and more people now, and not everybody's able to do this, who are getting a second phone for their day off. And their phone that has all their work stuff does not get turned on.
Sure.
I might go in a little bit of hyperventilation to do that, but benevolent detachment for some of those things. And then I think, okay, this sounds like the opposite of solitude. Having the right people around you matters. And I'm talking about this as an introvert where I get more energized by not being with people. But when I'm around the right people, and I'm not just saying this because you're sitting with me, David, but you're one of those people for me that there are times I just need to be around someone and be able to process, be able to talk, have someone who I know isn't going to blow smoke and say, oh yeah, you're right. You'll tell me and say, yeah, you're a little screwed up by that, and hopefully that's not on the podcast when you do that. But
we'll turn the mics off.
Actually, before we came in to record the podcast, I got a phone with someone where for the last hour, they're one of those people who for me just feeds into that and gives observation. I think having that's why small groups, and it's not a commercial, but it's just so important. Small groups matter. Relational proximity
I was going to say that's why one of my favorite messages I think I've ever heard you give was during this series, relational proximity, and it just the value of that, not just to us for looking for restoration, but for spiritual growth, for every aspect of our lives that's relevant. Relational proximity to the right people is important.
So much, and this is where the purpose of this podcast really comes down. So much of the Christian life comes down to practices that you practice, but they're unique to who you're wired, to how you are. Because we tend to want to turn into legalism. Here's 5 things that everybody needs to do. That I'm different than you. Praise Jesus. The world would get real boring if everybody was the same.
Right.
But discovering what those practices are for you, and that's really what we're going to be all about in this series, or in this podcast.
Well, Pastor Mike, thank you. Thank all of you for listening. It's been a really fun first episode of the Grow podcast. I hope that you were able to learn something from Pastor Mike. I know I love just the conversations that we've had like this. If you are lucky enough to know Pastor Mike, you know that it can go really quick from, goofing off about, the Vikings being terrible to a really deep, in-depth conversation that's helping you grow. And so that is one of the goals of this podcast, is for us to be able to share this time with you where we can just kind of sit and chat for 15, 20 minutes, however long, and we can grow spiritually together. So thank all of you for being here. We hope we'll see you again next week. These are going to come out every Monday. And so this was the first one. And Pastor Mike, thank you so much. Appreciate it. And let's go and be the church.